I would say the correct model for correcting zombie arm is something I call setting the spring. Remember in the last video series at Ripple of Power, we talked about how on the hitting side of our body, we drive energy into the ground, then up through our leg, into our pelvis and hips, expressed into our arm and hand in the stroke itself. So in order to fix zombie arm, we really have to focus on the other side of that spring-like release in Ripple of Power. That's the non-hitting arm, shoulder, feet, and toes.
The first step in this process is to keep the non-hitting hand on the racket as we turn our hips and shoulders in the initial takeback, as we see Roger Federer do here. The second step is when the non-hitting hand releases from the racket. We still want to keep the non-hitting arm and hand back, as we see Roger does here. This preserves the turn of the shoulders and hips in preparation for the hit. We don't want the non-hitting arm de-energizing and opening up to the left, as we saw in the first video on zombie arm syndrome. The third step is the most critical step, truly extending and stretching the non-hitting arm, which sends neuroelectrical signals to the muscles and skeletal pivot points in the non-hitting side of the body. Yes, we do want to extend the non-hitting arm to orient, focus, and balance the body in preparation for the shot. But the primary purpose of this type of non-hitting arm extension is to load the entire non-hitting side of the body, the non-hitting shoulder, the back, the side torso, the hips and pelvis, and down into the leg, feet, and toes. If we take a look at Roger from the rear, we can see the two different phases of setting the spring. In the first slide here, Roger's non-hitting hand has just released from the racket. He is orienting and pivoting for the spring action, but he's not quite there. In slide 2, Roger has set the spring. His non-hitting arm and hand are more fully stretched and extended, and this has sent a loading signal throughout the non-hitting side. But the clearest evidence of this setting of the spring is that in slide 2 you can suddenly see his left calf muscle bulge, indicating he has loaded his left side all the way down to his legs, feet, and toes. Note that now his weight is on the inside of his left foot and toe. He is ready to unspring the non-hitting foot and leg from this position. This dynamic balance and positioning on the edge of the non-hitting foot is every bit and perhaps more important than the extension of the non-hitting arm and hand. Even those club players who do a decent job of extending the non-hitting hand often stand too flat-footed, and they have not set the spring in the lower part of the body.
Once you've internalized the concepts, then I would advise to have someone softly underhand toss the ball as you're hitting your forehand, making you move a little. We don't want to be stationary in these exercises. We see too many players out there with equal weight on both feet trying to hit shots. It's not the way it should be done. We have to achieve what Feldenkrais called dynamic stability, up on the edge of our feet and toes in a sort of an unstable but balanced position, ready to release the spring. Again, this Ripple of Power is not following the mental model of what most players have in their mind about a tennis swing, which is generally a rotational type of swinging action with the arm from back to front towards the target. If you're doing the Ripple of Power correctly, you'll feel the unspringing and the uncoiling in the lower part of the body first before anything happens in the upper torso or with the arms or hand. And I guess the last thing you could do is when you see someone out there with the zombie arm going, instead of yelling, "Extend your arm," which really doesn't mean that much to people, yell out, "Set the spring."